Through the Child and Youth Advocates' work and additional feedback we received after the policy was updated, it is clear further clarification is needed in some areas, particularly around some of the definitions used, how the students will be supported through major life changes. I'll provide an overview of the changes that have been made. The definitions of legal, formal, and informal use of names have been added, and the use of names in the classroom and in extracurricular activities has been identified as formal. Professionals such as guidance counselors, psychologists, and social workers can use preferred names when supporting students under 16. In addition, Section 6.3.2 now states that if a student is not able to give consent to talk to their parent regarding a preferred first name, which is attached to a specific gender identity other than what they were born with, for record-keeping purposes and daily management purposes, they will be encouraged rather than directed to speak with an appropriate professional support person that we have in our schools and to develop a plan so that sometime maybe they'll be able to talk to their parents. Parents deserve to be respected, and we must recognize the critical role they play in their child's life and education. We stand by the changes we made to Policy 713, and we believe that parents should be involved in every aspect of a young child's education.
It sounds like you're doubling down on the policy, Mr. In spite of Mr. Lamrock's suggestions.
I don't see it as doubling down. I see it more as a clarifying some of the areas that weren't clear according to Mr. Lamrock, you folks, and so that we have clarity and everybody knows moving forward what the expectation is.
What does it say to trans and non-binary students if counselors, psychologists can call them by their preferred name and teachers can't?
Well, it says that these professionals that work in an environment of confidentiality can treat the students confidentially and work with them.
So why can teachers not do that?
Because if you use the name in the classroom, that's a formal use of the name.
I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So with these tweaks being made, one of them is concerning formal use of names. So does that mean, you know, if Robert prefers Bobby or Bob or Rob or whatever, they have to go by Robert?
No, what we're talking about is a name that's attached to a different gender than what they're identified with their parents. And in that case, if they're under the age of 16, we would require parental consent to use that. Otherwise, what we're saying is that we're keeping information from parents. And that's not the role of the school. If we look at the other policies that were quoted in the generation of Policy 713, such as the positive learning and work environment policy, the inclusion policy, the resources that have been identified, every single one of those talk about involving parents in major life decisions and involving parents in their children's education.
On that, the name thing, so Charlie is a gender-neutral name. Charlene is 12 and wants to go by Charlie, doesn't ask for a pronoun change. How is the teacher supposed to know if that is something that the parents should be told about or not?
Well, I guess it'll come down to when they have a discussion with the parents, and if they refer to the child as Charlie and the child is preferring to go by a different gender, that's a discussion that'll happen at home. These are family.
If the student asks them, call me Charlie,
yeah,
and that's it, and then it turns out that the child meant for that to be a gender transition of some kind, but like, how are the teachers supposed to know what name change is a gender transition and what is just...
Well, I guess if it's close to their given name, then one wouldn't normally presuppose anything. If it is a name and they're wondering about it, a teacher can always ask.
The advocate identified exactly the distinction that you made between somebody wanting to go by a name for a nickname and somebody wanting to because of gender identity purposes, and saying that to say one is okay and one is not is a complete violation of the Charter, of the Human Rights Act.
Oh yeah.
I guess I'm struggling to understand how you see that working if this heads to the courts.
I don't know how it'll work if it heads to the courts. I guess that's up for the courts to decide.
So you haven't had provincial lawyers look at this and say this is good, this is going to work, this isn't a violation of any existing laws, the charter or other acts?
So in any act that we bring forward, there's always the possibility that parts can be challenged, or any policy that parts can be challenged, and it would be not appropriate for me to presuppose what the courts will judge.
You don't see that distinction as inherently discriminatory?
No, I see this as important to have parent involvement in their child's education.
Which parts of the changes are supposed to address Lamrock's concerns about the human rights and the charter rights of the child?
So we're clarifying the formal and informal use of the names. We're talking about parental involvement and the importance of that in a child's education and their upbringing. And we believe that parents should be fully engaged with their children. I mean, they're our key stakeholders and partners in education.
Did you review how the policy contradicts other provincial policies?
I'm not sure what other provincial policies it contradicts.
Lamrock pointed out that it contradicts the privacy policy within the province to reveal a student's name without their wishes.
And the Education Act?
Well, I guess that's his opinion, and again, that would go back to when we look at some healthcare stuff, you have to be 16 or over in order to receive these services without parental consent. There's a whole bunch of different ages. You have to be 16 to drive a car. So he wrote it. It's his opinion.
Well, it's the provincial policy that is right.
Well, that's his interpretation of a policy.
Lamrock also affirmed the ability for DECs to create their own extra level of policy. It's laid out in the policy their ability to create additional policies within the policy or within the framework of 713. Do you still think that the motions to add to the policy that have been passed by some DECs run contrary and won't be able to be followed?
So the provincial policy prevails. DECs have the ability to strengthen a provincial policy if they choose to do so. My recommendation would be the policy is fine the way it is. However, should they choose to go forward with what they proposed, we'll take it on a district-by-district basis.
What are you going to do? Because they're talking about it as strengthening, but in your view, it would seem to not be strengthening. So these have been passed. They're going to be in place for September. What is the department going to do if that's leading to an outcome in the school environment that you clearly do not wish?
Well, actually, this policy is the one that's in place for September. And if they choose to modify it, then we'll address that at the time.
What happens when
Saskatchewan and Manitoba have indicated they're going to pass measures that are similar to the changes to policy 713 here. What do you make of that?
Well, I think having parental involvement in education is a national issue, and it's clearly more than just that. It's an international issue. I mean, most people believe that parents have an active role to play in their child's education. Certainly as a child grows older, you place more and more emphasis on their decision-making ability, and we look at 16 as that point where that would happen.
What happens when a student who doesn't want to give consent to have their parents alerted speaks with a counselor and still doesn't want their parents to know about it? What comes after that?
Well, they'll continue to work with the counselor if they want to.
Why is it okay for the counselor to use their chosen pronoun but not the teacher?
Well, the teacher's a public forum, so once that's said in public, it's in the public forum. A counselor, the work that you do with a counselor is private. Counselors normally would tell you if you go to counseling that if you tell me something that either endangers yourself or others, then I have to report it. Other than that, what you tell me stays right here.
Just to clarify, which concerns of the advocate are you addressing in these changes?
Well, I think we're addressing all the concerns that he brought up in terms of what wasn't clear in the policy.
So do you think these changes make the policy legal now and doesn't contravene the children's rights?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because we've clarified it, and I think that we're including the role of parents.
But the issue in the beginning, the legal issue, is that you're rejecting the child's request, and that to him that contravenes the human rights.
Well, no, we're not rejecting the child's request, and we're looking at age 16 and above. They can go by whatever preferred gender that they'd like, and under 16, we invite them to work with our professionals in the school to make a plan. So it's not a question of rejecting it.
But if the parent says no, I don't give consent, and the child's under 16, then the teacher would have to continually reject.
That's why we want them to work with the school team to develop a plan. We have wonderful professionals in our schools, and the idea wouldn't be that a child would go home and talk to a parent, or that they would come into the school and be assisted with a professional and talk to a parent if they thought the outcome was going to be something that they weren't looking for.
One more question.
Are you going to have any support for parents to work with their children if they fundamentally do not believe that their child should go by a different name or gender, to support the child?
Absolutely. We'll support the family unit in whatever way that we need to. We'll find professionals to work with them. They want to come and work with our professionals in the schools, and we'll do that. Okay, thank you very much.